Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel I like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow, singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter, and today is the day you guys love, which is ranking last month's palettes. So if you want to see what my thoughts are on all the palettes I tried in April, stick with me, we're getting into it right now. So if you like this look or any at all interested in this look, this is the first impressions from the Bella Beauté Bar Secret Garden palette. That video should be coming soon. Coming in at number 19 is the C Color Milky Way palette. This is a dupe for the Huda Naughty palette, I think. And mine, because of the way that my room is either always too hot or too cold, the sort of goo that this sits in melted out of the pan. So now all that's left is the little blobs of red goo. So yeah, that was a bit of a minus. I did try this palette, I think once or twice, and I felt like I had to work really hard to get it to look nice. And at that point I was like, you know what? I would just rather use something else then. If you recall from one of my other rankings, I got these C Color palettes for a penny a piece when they were closing. So not a huge loss, but I definitely think I'll not have this hanging around for very long because it was very alright. Similarly, in the very alright category is number 18, which is the Honore palette from Musée Beauty. So I was like super hyped to try Musée Beauty because I really liked the sort of art history vibe that they had, and I think I have one other palette of theirs that I haven't tried yet. But yeah, this was okay. The formulas are very like private label kind of formula. I mean, when you go into them, they're not bad. They're just not amazing. Like, they're just okay. And so for me, I was kind of like, I feel like some of my other more preferred private label formulas, I feel like some of my more preferred indie beauty brands are doing formulas that are way more dynamic than these. So this one fell really low for that reason. Color story wise though, it's pretty. Packaging is enormous. I really don't like that too much at all. And I like the cover art a lot. In fact, that might be what saves it around in my collection for a little while, but definitely is not a palette I'm going to go back to. Even though, like, you can see, I mean, they're not bad. They're just not phenomenal either. Okay, 19, 18, 17 is the Rebel Rouge Labs Can I Exist palette. And I picked this one up because I was picking up the blush palette. Ooh, forgot to mention the blush palette, but I will in just a second. So I picked this up because I was getting the blush palette, and if I got more than one thing, I ended up getting free shipping. So it was like either buy something else or pay, I don't know, like $10 for shipping. So I went ahead and picked this up, and I used it, I think, twice this month to get extra shades to fill in other eye looks. I did not exclusively use this palette for any looks. And I think, like, I was so hyped to get it, and then once I got it, I was kind of like, this is more private label-y than I thought it was going to be. So the formulas are like fine. They're not bad. They do show up. They do have good depth, but they're just not exciting and dynamic and special and wow the way I want them to be. So I went ahead and ranked this one a bit lower for that reason. I did want to mention this is the Bubblegum palette from Rebel Rouge and Alexa. This was the blush palette that I tried this month, and holy pigment, Batman. These are super duper pigmented. I was most of the time pulling into these two blushes, but had to like dip and then dust off, rub it on the back of my hand, and then put it on my face, because otherwise we went from 0 to clown college in 30 seconds flat. So I had to be very, very careful with this. I knew this highlighter was going to be way too deep for me, so I didn't even attempt to use it. I did try to use this one though, and again, it's a little bit too, like, there's a bit too much of an undertone for me to be able to use that successfully as a highlighter. I also did not try the Moon Crescent one as a highlighter, although that one I think would be more workable than the sort of lavender purple, although the lavender purple is definitely my favorite. So I think if they'd have done like more transparent base, that would have worked better, at least for my skin tone. For somebody with a deeper skin tone, these would probably all be very lovely. Coming in at 16 is the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette, and this one I definitely bought for like collector's purposes because I wanted to get all the lunar palettes, and I didn't need this one. It's a fine palette. It's good quality. I don't have any objection to the quality, but you guys know warm tone neutrals are typically not my vibe. And so this one definitely falls a little bit lower for that reason. I mean, I think for somebody who loves warm tone neutrals, these will all feel like very different, distinctly unique colors. But for me, it's like copper, copper light, copper, kind of pinky copper, kind of red copper. Like, I just didn't need all of that. So I know it's very classic Manny, this palette, and so I understand where it's coming from, but for me it's like a handful of shades I would use in here. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, that one. And when I came back into this palette on a couple occasions, those were the things I typically came back to. I did try to use this Sam shade too at one point, and it's nice, but it's just like fine. Next up is the Give Me Glow Pastel Dreams, and this one I used to kind of complement a couple of other things. I did make one individual look with this palette, and it, like, again, it's fine. It's just not like changing lives here. I do think that the metallics in here are really pretty. The pink one, Daydream, is the one that I used for the eye look that I did. But I like that they are very like sheeny colors, and I think this will be great as an accent to other palettes. I'm not sure how much I can do with just pastels. So this for me is really good complementary to other things, just not on its own. All right, next is the ColourPop Sailor Moon palette, and I wanted to get this one for completion's sake because I had the other one and I thought they would look really nice together. So I'd be excited to try to like marry the two together. But this one is definitely the warmer of the two, and so it's less my style. I did like the look that I made with it, but again, it's just not as favorite as the other one. It does also still have a pressed glitter in it though, which is not a huge plus in my accounting. But in general, it was a fine palette, so it kind of fell in the middle of the pack. Same with Nomad Safari. I got this one for completion's sake, and I love this sort of like micro suede that's on this palette. It's very, very nice. But I think I only made one look with this palette, and it was either using the browns or some of the olives. I know I didn't use this top row. Again, it's fine. It's just not my ideal color story, and so the more I play with it, the more I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, like it's decent, but it's not going to be one that I like crave to go back to, so it fell a little bit lower for that reason. Then we had the Citronata palette, and this one I really like. This is a Glam Shop palette, so if you are in the EU, this would probably be a lot easier for you to get a hold of, or at least this brand. I think this actual palette's retired. So what I really like about this one is this color up here. It has this kind of teal to gold duochrome iridescent shade to it. Then you have this really bright sunny yellow. I think the mattes in this palette are a bit too same. I wish they would have had one that was a bit darker than this, although it then would sort of feel very brown instead of yellow. But there's really not a way to make a dark yellow that isn't a brown. So yeah. The metallics in here are quite nice. I do like this pomelo shade, and I don't know if I used this one, but it's looking very promising here. Oh no, I definitely don't think I used that one. Not for any of the looks that I did, but it's like a brown with kind of a greenish flip to it, which is kind of interesting. All in all though, this is the standout shade. It's part of what made it climb this high in the ranking. Otherwise it probably would have gone a little bit lower. All right, then we have Lunar Beauty Moon Shroom, and this one, again, it has a lot of those like warmer tones, right? And I do like the yellowier and grungy olivey green warm tones as compared to just the orangey browns. So this one ranked higher for that reason. I do also like sort of the aubergine colors that are in here, this teal that's in here. This metallic is quite nice. The purple, I feel, stands out like a sore thumb because everything else in here doesn't quite go with it. The metallic in here, because it's a different undertone of purple, doesn't seem to go. I don't think any of the other metallics go with it, so I get kind of lost trying to use this purple in an effective and appealing manner. But otherwise I do think it's pretty as a color by itself. And then I do like the packaging a lot too. I think that's really pretty. I've been using the, if I can gently get it out, I've been using the highlighter palette a lot too. I've been leaving that on my desk so that I can reach for that. I've been leaving that on my desk so I can reach for that whenever I am doing eye looks in the morning. So overall, it was decent, but again, just not my like perfect color story. Then we've got some cosmic brushes business here. We've got the Muse palette. And again, another like pink and green palette, but this is definitely more like grungy swampy. What I discovered when I used this palette is I really, really like this antique shade here, to the point where I almost didn't pick up anything else when I came in this palette. Every time I used it, I wanted to go back to this shade because I just thought it was so interesting. It's got kind of a purpley, kind of a greeny base, and then it has this very like aqua blue, teal green shift to it, which I just think looks so spectacular on the lids, but still kind of pulls cool toned, which for me I think is quite a nice addition. So in general, the palette is kind of middle of the road for me, but that shade was a super standout. Then I put the Delicious Delights next in the ranking because I do like this color story a little bit more, but because everything is super bright, it doesn't all necessarily go together. So again, I got suckered into this like green and pink combo, right? Like very Sweet Frog on my face, if you guys have Sweet Frog around you. But it doesn't necessarily always blend out very nicely. I did enjoy using the purples and the blues, but I had to use them in conjunction with other things because I felt like they didn't just all go together in this one palette. So I feel like this is a great accent palette for those really bright, vivid, almost neon shades that you want to include in other looks. But by itself, I didn't think it was like a complete cohesive color story. Then I put in the Natasha Denona. This is the mini Starlit palette. It's part of what I picked up during the Sephora VIB sale. And I do think this is a really pretty little color story here. I do think these shades here are too similar. They needed something deeper. So I wish they would have taken this one out. Leave me this one. This is fine. And then give me something nice and really like deep and smoky, because I think you need that to sort of balance it out. This obviously was my preferred metallic in the palette. I did not use this one, but this one is very pretty and dimensional. It has kind of a pink base, but there's like blue and kind of silvery sparkles in it, which I just think give it a little bit of dimensionality that you wouldn't otherwise have if it was just sort of a standard peachy pink shimmer. Because it's a 5-pan though, I can't really put it up any higher than that. Then we have the Copacetic Cosmetics Haze palette, and I was so excited to pick this one up at Black Friday because I really love this super intense multi-chrome. Like you can see, like here it's green, up in the mirror it's purple, because that is exactly the shift that it runs through. There's only 2 mattes in this palette, which I appreciate that they did something lighter and something deeper, but then you're kind of stuck with just those 2 things. And I think like these shades in particular, they all have kind of similar look to them. So I think they could have maybe taken one of those out and given us another matte, brought the price down just a little bit. But I do think in general it's still very pretty, although I do always pull in another palette to kind of balance this out so that I can make a full cohesive eye look. But in general, very pretty, good quality. Then I put it in the ColourPop So Elemental palette, which I didn't think would rank this high, but as I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, I really liked this palette. I don't know what it is about these denim-y blues that I really, really like, but because they're so cool toned, I think it just looks very nice. It's a little bit different from like just a traditional smoky gray, and I just thought this one was awesome. The only shade I didn't like too much was this shade here, because it was very lackluster as an iridescent shade. Like, it's fine, you can see it, but it's not real sparkly. And if it had like a bigger pigment in there that was more sparkly, I think that would have been an even bigger hit. Going in at number 5 is the Smoky palette from Beauty Bay. And this is the big boy. When I looked at the smaller versions of this palette, it didn't have all the metallics in it that I wanted, so I had to get the big one, so I got the metallics that I wanted, and these are really, really nice. They do definitely feel very same, right? There's a lot of overlap, a lot of redundancy, which I don't necessarily mind, because if I'm going to buy a palette this big, I'm going to expect that to some degree, but I'm glad I got all the metallics that I wanted. I like that you have some that kind of pull a little bit blue, some that pull a little bit more coppery. You have this really light one here, some silvers. I like these kind of gunmetal-y shades here. The sparkly black is probably my color of the year, if you will. So I mean, I was just really in love with this palette, and I think the looks that you do with this one are really intense, smoky, interesting, dynamic, very sparkly, so I had to come up pretty high in the ranking. All right, and then coming in at number 4, I put Ninhydrin from Adept Cosmetics, and The reason I put it there is because I think the quality of this palette is really nice. I love these very like sparkly shades here. I didn't get to use all of them. This one I think I did not use, but everything else in here I did use and really liked. I think this blue and this green were probably my top favorites out of the entire collection. I did also like this 18 because it's just so reflective and bright. That really drew me in. I would say though, Adept is not my all-time favorite formula, so I need to be kind of judicious when I'm buying stuff from them. Although I'm probably going to buy Amy's new collab with them, even though they're not my favorite formula, because I think with a glitter glue I can still make it work. It's just, I don't know. I couldn't rank it any higher because I like the stuff that's coming after this a little bit more, even though this is really good quality. Then coming in at number 3 is Bella Beauté Bar Recently De-Influenced, and this one definitely got some love this month. Now, what I'll say is this whole area feels very redundant. Like, I don't think I needed 2 oranges that were virtually the same color. I didn't need 2 kind of like burgundy, mauvey, berry colors that were almost the same, especially when I have this one here. So I think they could have done a better job of making those more differentiated from one another. But outside of that, I thought the rest of the palette was pretty interesting, and I really enjoy the duochromes that are in here. The 2 iridescents in here are way more impactful than, let's say, the ColourPop one that I was just mentioning, right? So you can see, like, they just glow off the skin in comparison to the ColourPop. Now, I know the ColourPop one is like a quarter of the price, so there's that. But that's why I say this one kind of disappointed me, because I was comparing it to things like that throughout the month. I did also really like the kind of greeny shades that are in here. This purple is kind of a smoky purple, which I thought was quite nice, and I did really enjoy this shade as well. So overall, enjoyed this one. It came all the way up to number 3. Coming in at number 2, and I really was not sure that this was going to come up this high, but here it is. I almost didn't pick this one up because I was like, I don't know if I really need it, but when they had their Black Friday sales, they were sort of cycling through different sales, and this one got massively reduced, and then I was like, yes, now is the time. Because although I didn't care about these 2 shades up here, everything else in the palette was very appealing to me. I really like the different blues that they included. I love that this shade is super deep and dark. It's very dry, so you have to like sort of aggressively work with it to get it to sort of show up the way you want, but I think it's a wonderful addition to the palette. I do even like this sort of nude rosy kind of a shade here. I think that's really pretty as well. The metallics in here are very impactful, very impressive, especially this blue shade. And then you have another one of those like very sparkly kind of green iridescent shifty shades, which I really personally like. The blue here, Getting Cold Fins, has sort of a gold shift to it, so it makes it look a little bit odd with some of the, I think it looks a little bit odd placed next to these 2, but I was able to make it work, so overall I'm gonna let it slide. I just think the gold shift part was a little bit unnecessary, but like I said, overall awesome palette, came all the way up to number 2. And then coming in at number 1 was a palette that was not even part of my original monthly bundle for this month, but I saw it when it was sneak peeked and launched, and I was like, I don't care anything for this collab, but I'm gonna need that palette, and that's the Kiss Glam Light Rock and Roll palette. Now, I'm not a Kiss person. If you watch my video talking about this palette, you'll see I don't know anything about this group other than I think they do like rock and they paint their faces. That's all I know. But this color story, awesome. I love the depth here. I love how like deep and jeweled and rich these colors are. They blend out so nicely. And I like the fact that you have several metallics to kind of go along with each of them. So you can do a very monochromatic palette, or you can kind of work your way across the like rows and columns diagonally, or do like a quad to kind of get yourself something a little bit more interesting. I even think this red row down here, although I'm not a red eyeshadow person typically, was really, really beautiful, especially this like burgundy metallic here. I thought was quite nice. So overall, I think it was a really pretty compact but like impressive color story, and I found myself reaching for this plus other things the rest of the month after I got it to kind of complete my looks, because a lot of the palettes are missing some depth. So this had all the depth I needed. Alright, and with that said, that is everything for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.